So we've had this shorter conversation about finding mentors and using mentors for our own professional growth and development as L&D professionals. Let me ask you guys, now what?
I mean, I'll say in all earnest, it's been a minute and a half since I've had a mentor, and have definitely not done, I think, the good work that would be a good idea for me to seek to find a mentor in L&D space. I mean, I feel like I try to be connected and aware and engaging. Um, the pandemic definitely like threw that off in regards to, I felt very insulated for a
Mm-hmm.
while there, wasn't making those connections. So I'm hoping as everything maybe feels like it's flourishing a little bit more, maybe that it feels more like it's okay to come out of shells and to communicate and to try to connect with people again. Um, so I think I also recognize that the things that I mention or am aware that may be hindrances or barriers to why other individuals struggle, that is obviously a struggle for me. And seek to understand a little bit more about how to get over that barrier for myself. Because I do think that mentorships can be valuable. I think a big reason why I like then get a knee-jerk response to it, Shannon, is because I think then there's a level of the sense of I'm being a burden that I bring to the table.
Uh,
And like not able to square that away in my head, and feeling like, because if everything is so fast paced and information is fire hose, as we all use repeatedly in this industry with information, it's like, do I really want to be another piece of that fire hose to another individual?
such a
um,
good point.
right. And so I think that that's where, like, in the blog and the resource about like how we can try to do some of that foundational footwork so that we can try to start off on the right foot, so that we don't maybe connect to that idea of feeling like a burden to somebody who might be open. And I think it's always important, if we do and ask, this is something I learned a while ago and I forget where I learned it from, but always then like saying something like, and if this is something that isn't, okay for you or doable for you, or if this is not the time for you, please feel free to let me know, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
giving a person permission to be able to say no, I think is hugely important
Mm-hmm.
when we are doing some sort of ask.
Mm-hmm. I think you raised such a good point, and I'm really curious to hear what everybody else on the call has to say. You know, I you just rang a big bell with me, Erica, because I'm sure I'm not the only one, because I saw nodding heads here, where it's like, oh my God, I just cannot talk to this person about this because it's just a burden. I cannot eat up any more of their time on this. And I'm not the only one. So how do you guys reconcile this in your heads? So Victoria, I saw you nodding. How do you reconcile that? How do you have that conversation, internal conversation?
Well, I think about it because I literally just came off of my coaching call with my coach right before this, and I'm like
Oh,
trying
okay.
vigorously to pay attention to this, but I'm also processing what had just happened, because um I always feel like I'm one of those people that I almost have to ask for permission or ask for space. And this is something I continually struggle with my coach, because I get so much value out of it. And then I feel like he gives and gives and gives. And then I'm like, oh, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. And he just said to me, he goes, I get so much enjoyment out of this. This is you're filling my cup by letting me help you.
Nice.
Please continue to show up and do the work. And it was, I mean, there have been a couple of rounds of this, but I'm finally at the point where I'm going, I have the right to ask for what I need. And this person is doing this because this is giving them fulfillment. Let's do this for each other.
Mhm.
But it took me a while to get there. sorry, I don't feel like I'm making a whole lot of sense this morning.
No, you're good. And
Okay.
I appreciate that. And it sounds like you have a really good coach,
I
somebody
I do.
who, yeah, somebody who is, it should be a two-way street, right? I think you should be filling each other's cup. And
Yes,
it sounds like you've got a wise person on the other end of the line there. So good on
I
you.
do.
Congratulations.
Well, I'm lucky because it was a former colleague and who's also become a friend and a coach, but that also adds having those various relationships also adds a layer of complexity too. And so knowing which lane
Mm-hmm.
are we in when we meet and what's okay to talk about in that given space versus not. And so there do need to be some boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And Maureen, you put something interesting in the chat about reverse mentoring.
Yeah, so that's more for like the kind of older or more seasoned workers, and actually even at like the executive levels of the organization, in order to be, I mean, social media and having a presence online is a big part of a company's brand now. And so, like it was even at the, again, the executive level that they've taken on reverse mentors. So they've partnered with somebody who's fairly new, or they might be like, the Gen Z, or, that they learn from them. Um, the ins and outs of
Mm-hmm.
posting and social media, and it's just done in a way so it's mutually beneficial, because then
Mm-hmm.
the kind of the younger person appreciates where the older person is, and then also to be vulnerable as an executive of the company, to be asking of that from somebody who's a relatively new hire is just it's just a nice relationship to establish. And so, which also reminds me, there's a wonderful movie. At this point it's probably 15 years old, maybe more, but it's called In Good Company, and it is about the importance of having um, a mentor and somebody who it's Dennis Quaid, and then Topher Grace is like the younger person. And so the younger person ends up coming in and being more of the leader, but what they are lacking is that maturity and even the ability to connect with other people. So they end up learning from the Dennis Quaid character, the importance of having that mentorship. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Interesting.
even though they're at different levels of the organization, um, it was just kind of, again, the learning from others. You can learn from those who are older than you, and you can learn from those who are younger than you. There's just a different viewpoint,
Yep,
and we all need each other,
we do. We do. And this is why I advocate for people to join conversations like this one. Certainly not exclusive to to Learning Rebels, but there are other ones that happen like this. Join communities, network, go to conferences, meet people, and you don't have to do it live, right? And I think the pandemic kind of threw us all for a loop. It's like, oh, okay, those who weren't used to communicating in this particular type of venue, it might be a struggle for some. Now we're all kind of used to it, so now it's a matter of just jumping in. And if you are a member of your local ATD chapter, right, they do virtual events. So there are just so many ways. And one of the other comments that I think that was also on that LinkedIn post was, don't underestimate some of your side relationships, like your golf coach, or the person who you see every day at the library. You never know who's going to be your next right hand. you know so I think that there's an argument to be made, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about the last coffee chat, which is about that serendipitous moment, right? We can't make those unexplored discoveries if we aren't present in the moment. And the same thing goes for mentoring, I think, is that if we're unaware of who we surround ourselves with, then finding someone to help us becomes exponentially more difficult.
And that's such an important point. I love how you connected it to our last conversation about that, Shannon, about, the being present in the moment and having that sense of awareness and curiosity. In the coaching that I do, and when I was working with adults in transition, one of the sheets that we gave them, it was about, being able to, I called it, identifying your tribe. I'm not sure if I like tribe anymore. I think tribe has some weird connotations now, but anyways, identifying in network just sounded, too sterile. But it was an opportunity. I think it's a way of doing what you're talking about. So I'm trying to connect it to that idea of like us being present in the moment or aware about the peripheries. So, right, those things that we would maybe easily just sort of like, and allow it to fly by. But maybe there's something there because these individuals who we may have some sort of ongoing type of connection to, our awareness towards them may help to open up ideas or thoughts about possibilities. And so one of the things that we would do is I handed out this worksheet and we tried to create, there were buckets. I think I had 6 overall buckets of trying to identify where individuals within their space would land. And obviously with people in transition, the idea that we're trying to connect there is, and I think Donna started us off with it. No, I apologize. It was somebody else, about the idea. It's not just who you know, it's about who knows you as well, right? And so that idea of this mutually beneficial relationship, even if it doesn't culminate into BFFs and we're gonna, go skipping into the sunset with one another, it is about the exchange of the energy between the individuals that we are connecting with, so that it isn't just about, and I think that's why your example was so awesome, Shannon. So thank you for sharing it. That the person who you maybe put slightly up on a pedestal was human enough and humane enough to say, what about me? I'm speaking with the Shannon Tipton, because again, it's that the exchange of the energy that everybody brings value. Everybody has an opportunity to provide that particular level of whatever it is that they do well, or how they see things. And so if we can take a look at our networks, our tribes, our groups, our bubbles, our rebels, and our communities, that maybe some of those individuals on the periphery might be something where we want to explore, because maybe there is something there that provides another sense of value to something that might be mentorship. Where if it's a person who's in the same space, I think also another thing that came up for me, Shannon, is that maybe sometimes we feel weird about it because we're worried it's competitive. So if we're like trying to reach out to somebody who is within the same space, like, is this going to look like an adversarial type of situation? Or if it's somebody who might be in a different industry or sector, that might remove that sense from the table. So then I guess I want to ask, like, how do we help to make sure that people reaching out to those within our same industry, that we can reduce that idea of an adversarial type of situation so that it can feel inclusive, and then also maybe helping to reduce that idea of the burden of asking, somebody